Hello, everybody, and welcome to Conversion Chronicles, the Synergy podcast where marketing and sales converge. So we are excited for episode 8 today. We do have a guest. We will introduce him in a second. First, we will introduce ourselves, Prem. So my name is Desiree Halleck. I am the owner of Clarent Services. Clarent is a digital marketing agency where we help our clients with webinars. So we are best known for the webinar bee. We do a lot of other digital marketing services, but right now the webinar bee seems to be what is very popular. And so if you are a professional, you want to present a webinar, we are a full service solution for helping you get that webinar on the air, and we take care of all the logistics, all the promotions of it, and all you do is show up on the day of.
Cool.
And it's a really great way of getting new clients. My background is in actually neuroscience. And about 15 or so years ago, I switched that neuroscience interest into marketing. And so we have a very analytical approach from all our science background at Clarent. I was born and raised in Vancouver, Canada. I have 2 children, Claire and Anthony. And we made our way across the continent out to New Jersey, which is where we live now. So how about you, Prem? Tell us a little bit about you.
Hence the name Clarent, I guess.
Claire and Anthony, exactly. That was an easy one.
Well, Desiree, thanks for the introduction. As Desiree said, I'm Prem Kumar. Great to have everybody back on our 8th episode. Time flies. But just I'm owner of Efficace Consulting, a boutique consulting firm, a strategic consulting firm in Flemington, where I work with small businesses in helping them build their strategic plans so they have success in executing them. So I do the front end of creating the plan and also the back end of execution, where I evaluate both the business plan at large to figure out where the opportunities lie. And then once you figure that out, how best to execute so that the ultimate goal of building a business is what I work with a lot of the businesses. My background has been in, I have a master's in science, and I've been doing strategic consulting ever since I landed here in the US with $250 in my pocket on March 10th, 1989. And I can stretch $1 for sure. So I've been doing strategic consulting ever since, and I've been involved with a lot of life science brands, helping them build both on, I've had a good fortune of having a very varied experiences in sales leadership, and then marketing and sales training. So one of the goals here with this podcast is came up with the idea that to bring all the stakeholders kind of together to work towards a common goal. So, and to Desiree's point, we try to be very action oriented within this podcast. So that's our goal. So looking forward to the discussion with our guest today.
Absolutely. So let's first recap episode 7. We went over what a SWOT analysis was. And you wouldn't imagine that an entire hour could be filled with just talking about SWOT, but we could have kept going, right? I mean, you can go all day long.
All day long, exactly.
But so we really went over the holistic understanding of a SWOT analysis and really why it's there and why it can be used. So obviously we know its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you would use your SWOT analysis for your strategic alignment, right? So when you're creating a strategic plan, you want to take the results of your SWOT analysis and create the plan with that.
Absolutely.
You make sure, we talked about integrating that with your decision makers, making sure everybody is in alignment with your SWOT analysis. Right. They all understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. And from a market standpoint, what are your threats and what are your opportunities? We talked about learning lessons from failures. If a SWOT, if something's not working, then how do you learn from those lessons?
Which normally happens on a regular basis, because in all my career, I've never seen a perfect plan to date.
Exactly.
I don't think you will see one, but.
Yeah. And that brings me to the last point, continuous improvement, right? Yeah. I mean, you're always really conducting SWOT analysis. You don't even know you're doing it, really. You're just doing it, right? So if you're an effective business leader. So that's just something to think about. Some thought-provoking takeaways from that episode was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is the SWOT analysis for your business? So rate yourself on that if you didn't do so 2 weeks ago. And the second question to ask yourself is, on a scale from 1 to 10, where do you think your organization is keeping the SWOT analysis relevant throughout the year? So you can conduct one SWOT analysis and then abandon it forever and never return back to it, and it's useless, right? So the whole point is revisiting it and seeing where you're at with the SWOT analysis and reconducting it all the time.
Sure.
So with that, I will send it over to you, Prem, to introduce our exciting guest.
Sure. Thanks, Desiree, for the takeaways and some of the lessons we learned. And, I couldn't think of a better person to, as you know, for this podcast, for the second Tuesdays, we talk philosophy, or we talk how something could be done. And then the fourth Tuesdays, we bring somebody who's done this kind of. So that's our tag team from a philosophical approach of doing strategic planning, and somebody who's done it. Today, we have the great pleasure and honor to have our honorable guest, Honorable Paul Muir. And I will, if I read out his resume, that'll take an entire hour.
It would take the whole episode.
But I'm going to try and brief it as quickly as possible so we can get to the meat of our discussion. So he's currently the Chief Development Officer for Imagine, a center for coping up with loss, which is something that he is very passionate about, and he'll talk about it. But prior to that, he was the Township Committee Mayor of Bethlehem Township for almost 13 years.
14 years. I'm still
14 years.
Currently mayor. It's my 14th year on the committee and 10th year as mayor.
10th year as mayor.
Wow.
And then he's the managing director of Jugtown Holding LLC. And then he's a chief connoisseur for vintage motor. That's something he's very passionate about, and he'll talk about as a kid. That is something that's been his passion, to restore cars or historic cars. He in the past he's been a managing director of Legacy Metals. He was the executive director of Redville Museum for almost 13 years, right? 13 years. And then, of course, prior to that, he was with AXA Advisors in Woodbridge as an assistant manager, vice president, metal recycling, and then he's curriculum consultant for Bucknell University. That's in PA.
In Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Yes,
Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, yes. So all has contributed to a huge, contributed to not only to society at large, but not only in government, but as a well-wisher of a community, he has contributed to the community at large. So, with all that said, with the brief introduction, I'm going to kick it off with saying that with all these varied experiences, Paul, let's discuss your early days and how the entrepreneurial spirit kind of came about. Let's talk briefly about that.
Sure. I don't think it necessarily has to be in your DNA, but I guess I can't deny that it's in my DNA. So I grew up in a family-run business, as you had mentioned, about metals recycling. My great-grandfather had started a metals recycling, what we called scrap junkyards back in the day. So initially started in the late 30s and really became a larger business in the 50s. And then my father and uncle really grew the business in the 70s and 80s. We primarily processed non-ferrous metals. We also had a steel yard and auto parts. We also wholesaled used cars, and as I do too, my father and uncle dabbled in real estate. So they were always varied, and I always asked them why they didn't just concentrate on one thing. And they said multiple income streams are good because it depends on how markets change.
Very true.
So oftentimes now, even today, people look at me and say, "Why do you do so many different things?" And I think that entrepreneurial spirit and that idea of multiple income streams has stuck with me, and I very much remain in a portion of that world. So we had sold our family business in 2006 to a company that came here from China that we helped start. Okay. And we grew with them. We were one of the first to be able to export to China and process. and we sold the business in 2006. I still work with that company
is that okay?
quite often.
Okay.
I started my own small metals recycling business. That's the Legacy Metals. It was a nice nod to what we do with the Legacy name. But we service industrial metal recycling, so machine shops and production facilities, and do some demolition work as well. And then even when I was in college, you went way back into my history to go into the curriculum advisor at Bucknell. But I was fortunate enough to graduate early from Bucknell, and then I worked there for a little bit as a curriculum advisor, integrating our introduction management course to other universities. But even when I was at Bucknell, I was a teaching assistant and worked on campus. But I rented a 2-car garage, and I bought and sold and repaired cars as well as a college student, which was funny, especially then. I would go into town and people would know me, and I got to know the other repair shop and the towing company because I needed their tow trucks, and everybody's like, well, why do the town people know you? It's like, because I run a business in town already. So it's something I've always done,
passionate
and continue to do. So like I said, I still have the metals business. As you shared, I built my first vehicle when I was 12 with my dad.
Wow.
It's a 1955 Ford pickup truck that I still have. It's part of the logo of our business. I'll give a quick shout out. The logo for my restoration shop was designed by Hunterdon County Polytech.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
work with the Bridging the Gap program. So if anybody's looking to locally work with our Polytech students, they do some great work. And the student, I showed him a picture of the truck. He wanted to know a little bit about my shop and created, I think, a very fitting logo. But from the age of 12 to now, we have an official business, and we've won multiple national awards.
Awards,
the Automobile Club of America, Porsche Club. I'm a senior judge.
Porsche Club.
Yes, I'm a senior judge with the AACA. I'm a Concord judge with the Porsche Club.
Really?
I don't get out to judge as much as I would like to. I definitely don't get a chance to show my own cars anymore, which is probably, I guess, I should be thankful for because we're busy with customers. But it's something that we're still.
Well, I am going to be one of his customers soon.
Yes, I'm looking forward to what we're working on. And even the other, we can talk about it later. But even that. Classic business is kind of a culmination as we talk about some change and SWOT analysis.
Sure.
And how you change strategically. It's got its own story and includes some failure too, because that's what we all like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, thank you for that fascinating background of yours. So as I said earlier, I couldn't think of anybody else can discuss SWOT analysis because I'm sure, I don't know how many SWOT analysis is done.
Yeah, from so many different points of view. It's awesome.
So given that, if you can briefly outline, what is the importance of a SWOT analysis as you look through your strategic planning with the varied businesses you've had?
Yeah, I'm happy to hear, and I understand what you shared in your last podcast. And like you said, you talk about a little bit about the theory.
Sure.
And I've always, been the one that's discussed as a practitioner of what we do. And so using that SWOT analysis is key to finding success and then integrating it into your strategic plan. So it's not something you just put on paper, but it's something you need to understand and be what I call situationally aware.
Sure.
It's something you consistently you need to be. So that's one of my terms that I've coined. But the SWOT analysis allows you to be situationally aware and then integrate those steps into your strategic plan. And these all need to be active documents. I mean, I think that's the difficult part with a strategic plan. Everybody thinks about it. You put it in a book and you put it on the shelf, and 3 years later you look at it again.
Like,
we were supposed to do that,
right.
and we didn't do it, or we failed at this, but we knew it was a threat when we did our SWOT analysis. Why didn't we address it then? And oftentimes your opportunities and threats may even be the same thing. So you take an
Absolutely.
idea of, technology is always an easy one, but especially as we're approaching, we're in the age of AI. What does artificial intelligence look like for many businesses from an opportunity and threat standpoint, and understanding how you can maximize your potential by knowing how that impacts your business. And that includes talking to other people, like you had shared and say, I've experienced the SWOT analysis both as a nonprofit leader, board member, but also just as a community member that other nonprofits have brought me in when they do community workshops, which is important to do.
Sure.
I think the challenge from a small business standpoint that people don't talk about is you don't always have the same opportunities. So if I'll use the example, the Hunterdon County YMCA is now a regional YMCA, but I participated in their strategic plan. And community leaders will take the time to go share with them.
Sure.
But if you have a small business, you can't call up everybody around you and they're going to drop their business and come help out. So you look creative. Maybe you build relationships within your industry, and whether it's a supplier or an end user, and you need to talk to them to understand what you can put into your SWOT analysis. So it's really not only situationally aware, but I almost would say it's a point of survival in that business, and even for nonprofits to understand what the outside community thinks and how you're interacting with them.
Right. I mean, in the last 5 minutes that he already spoke about, he's given you 10 ideas of how you can be resourceful in your businesses. So that's absolutely great. Desiree, you want to pick it up from?
Yeah. So my question to you is really, give us an example. I feel like you would have a million examples, but can you give us an example of where you've used SWOT in one of, developing any of your strategies for your businesses? Just give like a real life example of.
Sure. So I mean, we can talk about my small business, and then a nonprofit is probably even more active on the SWOT analysis. Because I will say, as a small business owner, it's often overlooked. You get into your business and you don't always take the time to go back. I've had the opportunity to reinvent the automotive business. So when I shared, there's a story of failure, and we shared because we all learn from it. At first, you don't want to share it because you don't want to admit that you ever failed at anything. But I had started my business actually as a towing and transportation company.
Okay.
And then we had acquired an auto repair shop that did general repair, but I had always been working on classic cars. And then we expanded into a used car dealership as well. And then, by 2008, this was 2003 when we started. By 2008, we all know there was a significant recession. We had a great business. We had 40 used cars sitting on the car lot. We were selling 6 to 8 a week, but they were all financed. And local banks all of a sudden withdrew because they were worried about how they were financed. So how do we sell these cars now? Then we had customers, unfortunately, that we were working, but because of the economic conditions, just couldn't afford to put even brakes on their car, and it was kind of twofold. It was heartbreaking to see people in that situation, but it was also heartbreaking for us because we're losing customers there. Yeah. But meanwhile, I realized that the classic and the custom cars and the things that are very the owners are they're usually from a higher income level. But regardless, even if they aren't, they're very dedicated to what they do.
Right.
So I look out in the garage and I see, 5 bays filled with now customer classic cars. And so, well, that's what's been consistent anyway. How can we now modify that? So we had the opportunity to revamp the business, if you will. And that's when we look at that SWOT analysis and try to figure out, so we visually saw what those opportunities and threats were together.
Absolutely.
But then it gave us that chance to take a step back, and how can we turn this into a viable market? Because with that business, it's more regional than just local. Because you can't supply enough work like you would on a regular car. So that's where the SWOT analysis really comes in, because it takes a lot more planning to be successful and be consistent in that business. And the threats are larger because you need very specific labor in addition to that. And so how do you then find that within the region of where you are? And I wanted to stay in Hunterdon County, and we are still here. But it took some time to figure that out. But, this year is actually, well, I guess I said I started at the end of 2023, but I consider 2024 20 years in that automotive business. And we still do transportation, but we don't do towing. We do just classic car transportation, and we work on our classic collector vehicles. And continue to grow and continue to look for opportunities, but I don't know if we'd be able to make that shift. The other one I would share, I'd take something more recently from Imagine, is we expanded to Newark pre-pandemic, but we always had a partnership with other organizations. So we were the Boys and Girls Club, and then in December we leased our own space and shared grief support in our own space in Newark. Volunteerism is a challenge for all volunteer organizations, regardless. As mayor, we look at our emergency organizations, so across the board. But then if you go into in more urban environments, volunteerism is even a bigger challenge because people face other challenges in their daily lives typically. So our grief support with facilitators are all volunteers. We have trained staff that then train the volunteers. We have 100 volunteers. Where do we find the volunteers to meet the need for grief support in Newark? So then it took us an opportunity. We're going through a strategic plan now, but we're looking at, as part of that, potentially creating an internship program. So we're a nonprofit looking to support the community with our mission of grief support, but we're also a nonprofit looking to help the economic growth within the community and finding another opportunity, which in something that is a threat. So we're looking to partner with some of the universities and medical institutions to provide a stipend for paid interns, and then hopefully provide a career path for individuals within the North community.
Wow.
Awesome.
So again, it's always taking the two sides of those opportunities and threats, or weakness and threat, and looking to see where you can turn those into an opportunity. And the SWOT analysis does that, because, like I said, oftentimes you'll have something maybe on the same item on two different sides.
Sure.
How do you rectify those two together? And oftentimes that's where your solution is.
Wow. Good.
So how large for the small business, the first example you gave to us, how large is your team for that?
Now that's the other thing we learned. We're relatively small because it's a very specific business. So we have 5 people working in the shop, and so we have specific roles. I like to do the metal fabrication. So I come from, I don't know, maybe some of the academic side things, but also then the hands-on, and again, mostly self-taught, but I'll do a lot of the metal fabrication and the paint work on the cars. We have mechanic specific.
Sure.
We have other individuals that specialize in body work, and then electrical systems as well. So those are the kind of challenges.
The reason for my question is, how much do you involve your teams, multiple teams, so you can even answer this more in general, into your strategic plan and your SWOT analysis? Like, do you take their feedback from the field kind of thing and then incorporate that, or how does that work?
You have to do that. And for me, because I do, I'll joke, I do too many things, but I do so many different things. I need to rely upon people to provide that information and be productive for me. So I have a phenomenal manager in the shop. So I'm not there every day.
Sure.
They're working there now. Probably not listening to me on the podcast, but I'll make them listen later. But the point being, I know we had customers bringing cars in today, and I know that we can trust my staff to get the work done and interact with those customers in the proper way, because we do have discussions. So we'll attend, even people don't think about that from an auto shop, because it's a somewhat I say basic function, if you will. But
it's a business.
It is, and we'll take time to sit down and have a staff meeting and explain. We go over the threats, and when more so the threats and weaknesses.
Right.
You're trying to improve.
So one of the things for that, I talk to my staff all the time, is making sure there's no labor chart. So if you have a regular auto repair shop, generally, or a dealership, and you go to the mechanics are paid on what a book time is. So on a new car, it takes 3 hours to replace an alternator. The mechanic should do it in 3 hours, or you lose money. If he does it in less, then he makes some money because he gets paid per part.
Yep.
My staff are all paid hourly based on their skill, and there's no book for what we do, but we also need to be respectful for what the customer
wants.
Yes. And so we do estimates. We sit down and we talk about time, and we talk about parts availabilities. And so I said some things need to be fabricated, some things need to be sourced, and those are our challenges, and understanding how do we overcome those. And so with parts, it's proper planning. So we don't take more projects on than we think we can handle. So we usually have 3 or 4 major projects, and then do some maintenance in between. But we do that 3 or 4 because we know we can plan ahead, so that we're not waiting for something to come in on a certain project.
Got it.
So each car is essentially its own little project management and team.
Okay.
They record hours, they record parts, and they know how to do that without me, and they wouldn't be able to understand that if we didn't have that discussion about the 2 major threats of time and material.
Awesome.
That's 2 great examples. One with your small business with the classic cars, where the economy changes the way you want to do business, and the other one you talked about, Imagine, where you're coping up with loss and you're trying to expand the help that the communities need to other areas, much needed areas. Those are 2 different entities, but you've been successful enough to figure out with the changes that are happening. I mean, a lot of these changes are beyond your control, right? And economic changes, supply chain issues with after COVID, for example, getting the good people to work with the skill set that you're looking for. All those complements into your success in a business. And you outlined pretty nicely as to how the SWOT analysis or the discussions about each project kind of weighs into the success of that. So let me ask you from you talked about the importance of it, but how do you keep this upfront, the planning part of it, or so that it's not gathering dust? You did it on January 15th, and then you visit January 15, 2025, let's dust it out. How do you keep it real so that it is part of what you do? And to Desiree's point about having all the stakeholders involved, how do you keep this a live document? I shouldn't say document, but a live consistently over a period of time.
No, it is, and I hear people talk about strategic plan, and they keep saying living document, and it's a key word, but then how does it become a living document? It's not living on its own.
Yeah.
It's often living on a shelf collecting dust, and I think the trend, especially in the nonprofit world, has been more proactive in the past few years.
Sure.
I think small business, depending on where it starts or comes from, has been a little bit ahead on some strategic planning, especially if you need funding because you're working with SBA or looking for some other mentors within that industry. But I think having clear end goals and knowing what the time frame is, and I think we're seeing shorter strategic plans, obviously after the pandemic. But I think that's probably wise regardless, because we're looking at technology shifts that the cycles are much, much quicker. Economic changes are much quicker. And I think generational shifts are occurring quicker. We need to react to them
that's a
more
great point.
Yes.
So that if you have those clear goals and you're looking at as short as 18 months to 3 years, and I wouldn't go more than 3 years on a strategic plan at this point for any organization.
Right.
You know what those end goals are, and then the strategic plan should be giving you the tasks to do that. So creating some sort of tracking system is key. And so we talk about key metrics and
KPIs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So identifying those for whether it's a nonprofit or a business. So say for a nonprofit, what's the community that you're serving? So how many people do you serve? How many people need your service that you're not serving? How do you then reach those people, and what's your strategy for that? And then of course nonprofits, I say it's your tax status, not your business plan. So you need to watch your financials as well, just like any other business. So you set your budget, you set your fundraising goals, you know what your expenses are, and you track those. And same thing with a small business, obviously. And you look for those growth opportunities. A small business, I think some of the things that you need to do is looking at the investment in it as well, because you depending on the type of business, that investment looks different, but you need to keep growing,
right,
and advancing in that business. So it's really the same thing. It's like that nonprofit, except it's your market instead of the community. Is what is your target market? How are you reaching them? How many people are you reaching? How many people are still out there? And how do you best get to them? And then financially, how are you surviving doing this?
Right. That's awesome. So the reason I'm smiling a little bit, because before the SWOT analysis, we did an episode on the 10 elements of a good strategic plan, and you just outlined all of them.
Yeah.
I'm glad I could validate it.
That literally, I mean, you actually you kind of talked about how it comes alive for you, right? And in our episode, we kind of discussed how creating a strategic plan, and SWOT analysis being one of them, right? How each step kind of leads to the next one. And you just outlined how that flows within any business, because that's what a lot of businesses from an opportunity perspective should look at, in my mind, because, having worked with businesses, almost now 25, 30 years, that is, if there's one takeaway to Paul's point about how do you take a business, analyze it, and how do you create an actionable plan that you look at it on a regular basis, get your team involved, to Desiree's point, and now you take the actionable step. And then you mentioned another big point about tracking the progress. Put metrics in place.
KPIs, for sure.
Measure the KPIs. You know what you're doing, that you're wasting your time on, or that you could take your precious time and put it somewhere else that's more productive. All this kind of contributes. So thank you for sharing. Now, and you talked about from your management team, right, or your team as to and you take these decisions, do you give responsibilities to each of your team members as to what they should be looking out for within the hallmark of a SWOT analysis or a business plan, and they come back and report back to you, I guess?
Paul, can you fix your microphone? Just bring it up.
Sliding. So very much so. That's why I kind of jumped in. I was very excited about. I think empowering your team is really key to success, and especially if you're looking to grow an organization or a business, because how much can you individually do? And that's the question I ask. And I also ask my managers, what are they doing to make my job easier? And what are their employees, then their next level of report, doing to make their jobs easier? But they need to have buy-in, they need to understand, but they also need to have a level of responsibility. So I feel that if, as a manager, I set the goal, we monitor it because we know we're looking at those KPIs. But if I'm coming in and asking, 2 weeks before something is due, and did you get it done? Did you get it done? That, to me, that doesn't work. And
You're babysitting.
Yes, and if I'm the one, I want to put the responsibility on the manager to get it done, and I feel like they have more buy-in at that point.
Sure.
Yes.
And again, if you're going to have growth, I can't do everything, and so I need to know that those managers have the ability to get it done, and hopefully they grow. The two things that I always look at when I come into an organization, and maybe it's self-defeating to me, is I want the person that's working under me to be able to do my job one day or go somewhere else and do that job as well as I can do it. And so
that's a great point.
I feel that there's always, I have a responsibility to the organization, the business or the organization, but also I feel I have a responsibility to those that are working with me to achieve those goals and reporting to me. If they're so interested and to take on that role, I want to support them in that role. And it's really important to be able to do that and then bring in the next level of management and then help promote those individuals.
Thank you. That's
awesome.
That's awesome.
So would you say, Paul, how do you balance the short-term goals and the long-term objectives in your strategic process? Like, you can do a big SWOT on your business, and then you can do all these mini little SWOTs. Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, and that one's tougher even from a practical standpoint because you easily get mired in the day-to-day operations.
Yes.
But I think you need to understand what pieces of those day-to-day operations get you to that next goal. And so I always equate things to almost a ladder, because but not climbing from step to step. You're building that ladder. So you're on one step, but the next step you're taking is actually not taking the next step to the wrong, but building the piece of that ladder on that side and the other side so that you can put the rung and get there.
Okay.
And so it's easier said than done. I wish I had a simple answer for you, but all too often I will just admit it's difficult because you're looking at those. But again, having clear goals and having actionable steps to get there helps you in that, because every once in a while, at least if you have a busy month and you're just focused on meeting the demands of that month, if you have an actionable and definable goal, you're still going to say, well, did this busy month get me to that point? So you can take a step back and look and see if it got you to where it wanted to be, or maybe it got you to a better place, and then you take that and readjust your strategic plan based on what that busy month was like. But you really need to set those times to look back.
I feel like the SWOT analysis really teaches us that life nor is business linear. It's not a straight line where you see your goal. It's like, okay, I'm going to go along this path and reach it. It's like it more takes you like a snake going back and forth. And
ultimately you get there.
And you may have totally pivoted to, and maybe even regenerating a goal, right? Like that didn't exist before. So that's completely what I've learned.
I will say, even at this stage of my life and business, I fantasize about that straight line path to success. But much in life too, if you look at the people who have faced the most challenges, they're usually the most empathetic and able to support others, and businesses are the same way. If you've had the most challenges, you've had the most learning opportunities. So
adversity builds character.
I guess I would rather have the person that's been tested and I know that they've either learned or succeeded and moved on to the next level.
Yep, absolutely.
Go ahead.
So, if you're thinking about giving advice to a business owner who is worried about the investment of time that it takes to create a SWOT analysis, to create this strategic plan, what advice would you give to them if they're, on the fence?
So I'm going to misquote this. There's a quote that talks about paying now or later, essentially. So you're either going to be paying now in the price of preparation, or you'll be paying later in the price of regret. And it's really,
That's a good one.
it's really your choice as to what you want to do.
Yep.
And so oftentimes there could be a lot of enthusiasm around a business. If it's say what I do with classic cars, maybe somebody's grown up building cars and they're excited about it, or if it's a trade, you want to get right in and start applying your trade. But if you don't understand what your market is, what your competitors are, and how to run that business, you're going to be paying for it in regret down the road. So take the time up front to properly plan and prepare that business through your SWOT analysis, through your strategic plan, through a proper business plan, and understand what it takes to be successful within whatever industry or market you're trying to play in.
And your businesses will also be worth more
Correct.
with these things documented
great
as well.
point.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
I feel like there's so many entrepreneurs, let's say they're coming to this point in their life, they're like, oh, I don't know which direction to go. And they'll just shut down their business, let's say, because they're at that, maybe they're retiring, whatever. But they don't realize they could sell it.
Right.
Yes.
But with
Absolutely.
all of these things, they could sell it and have a nice parcel that they could be sitting on, right? So
I mean, that's a great point, because to Paul's point, when he started the conversation of having an end goal, right? And the goals might change, to your point that in retirement, right? You're thinking of retirement or wanting to sell the business off. Well, if you're trying to sell the business off, you might as well quantify it in the sense that increase the value with everything that just Paul outlined, whether it's the strategic plan value that you bring to the table, year over year, quarter after quarter, the success that you build, the navigation of the team and responsibilities, and how it kind of works together as a well-oiled machine.
Yep.
All that adds value to your entity. But the other thing that I want to point out in the last discussion that you made about that you would currently, within the circumstances that you're looking at, and the two things that you talked about, one was the technological shifts, and then the other one was the generational shifts. Just between these two, and he made a comment which is, I think, worth talking about, is the fact that you should only look between 18 months to 3 years plan in today's world, which is actually a big shift from what it used to be.
10-year plan.
10-year plan. I mean, these things are not valuable. I mean, it's not practical anymore.
Yeah.
Because of what exists yesterday, last Monday, doesn't exist the following Monday.
Yep.
Because of the generational shift, the technological shift that's happening, AI you mentioned.
So fast. Yeah.
So more so with all that you just stated, it is so critical to have this engine moving in the right direction and make it a living document and create a timetable as to how often you can visit it so that you are top of it. In other words, I think it takes you from a reactive mode to a proactive mode.
Definitely.
When you are doing the SWOT analysis or the business plan the correct way. You had a couple of thoughts?
I just had one thing also going back on what you said, invest the time into
Yes.
a strategic plan. So I was showing my kids this little stick figure that I found online, and it was a photo. It was a picture of like a hill, like a rock. Like these stick figures were climbing a rock.
Mm-hmm.
Half of them were going down. So they all were at the same starting point. They could choose to climb up to get to the top, or they could choose to slide down and have fun and don't do the work, right? So it shows that if you do the work now, it's almost only half the work because you were already halfway up. But if you choose to have fun now, you're even more further down in the hole, let's say, and you have to climb up twice the distance that you had to when you started. So I was teaching my kids, like, work hard now and you will coast later kind of thing, right? And
Great
so
point.
I feel like that's part of this. Invest the time now for your strategic plan. Your business will be worth more later, and you'll be in a better position and more successful, right?
Desiree doing the SWOT analysis with the kids.
Right?
I love that. I love the graphic, but I love starting off with the I'll share just a quick humor story I have to about my son. what do you say about your kids? My son was in 6th grade. He's a freshman at North Hunterdon now, but he was in 6th grade. And he'll probably not appreciate me sharing this story. But we went to the parent-teacher conference, and they teach financial health in 6th grade. And the students are assigned, I guess they roll dice or whatever, and pick they end up with an income. So my son received $25,000 a month, which is nice. That's a nice income.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah, so I think that was the highest. And they were told to choose housing. And so he went to the teacher, which wasn't an option, and said, because they were supposed to rent and figure out how much they could spend on rent. And so Peter says, can I go buy a house? And some of my friends who are making less can come live with me, and maybe I can prorate the rent like some that make less.
I love that.
And so the teacher's looking at it, and they were telling me, they're like, PJ was kind of out of the rules, but I thought you'd be proud that he's been watching things you do, because we would assume you would come up with something similar. So I left very proud, but talking about
that is awesome.
Kids,
being creative.
Talking about kids, that's the other thing I always tell other parents, or you think that kids don't know anything. They watch everything you do. Oh my God,
they're sponges.
They're sponges. They absorb everything you do. That is a classic. That's a great example of.
I love it.
I thought he was in trouble at first. But
you're like,
even if he was, I was still proud.
Really proud.
He wasn't following the rules, but I was proud.
That's awesome, Paul. But something I didn't mention about everything that we just described about Paul does. He's also a family man with 2 kids. So I don't know how you juggle all this, but there could be a whole business plan on that. But
okay, I would say, I was just like, my life philosophy is find things that you enjoy doing, which is everybody says that, but then try to integrate those different things, and so my family thankfully is very supportive of a lot of the things that I do. They get involved in some things, not all things, but we do try to find time to do these things together. So a lot of the nonprofits that I'm involved in, my family will get involved in as well.
Awesome. Absolutely,
it's a nice time to spend together. And then I consciously do, like I say, you take the time at the end of the month to look back to see what you accomplished. You make sure that we have time. I hate to use the word schedule, but make sure that we have just time that we sit and do family things and. Don't pay attention to our SWOT analysis for about an hour.
And celebrate wins, right?
Yes.
Celebrate wins.
That's awesome. So I know you talked about the SWOT analysis being. I mean, you've had so much success, and learning from failures and opportunities there. And one of the themes that kind of came around was communication. That you talk to your team, whoever that is, and I love the fact that you also are a mindset that you're. Next in command, or who was the closest to you, you want that person to grow and take on your responsibilities. That is not something very common that happens in the corporate America today, or corporate worlds as a general. It's gratifying to listen to somebody that has that mindset of growing people, because I think the world would be in a much better place doing that. So talk about communication, that how do you keep that communication going within your larger team, and whether if you can give any advice or guidance to people at large with businesses. Or it doesn't matter. You don't have to be in a business.
No. I say, well, it's a business or a nonprofit. You could be a board member in a nonprofit, maybe trying to encourage your executive director because you're bringing outside experience from your corporate world. I think one, again, is taking that time up front. So no matter where I've been, we'll take a step back and try to find some connections and understand. So we'll go have a lunch, say, with my team off-site. And it changes the conversation dynamic, not being in the office, but understanding what their goals are and what they are looking to achieve, and then having conversations ongoing about that. And then, not equating staff members to children, but astute people are going to watch those around them and learn from them. So always being very conscious about the actions that you take, the level of professionalism, the level of integrity that you bring, and then using opportunities to share the knowledge and experience that you've had with those that are rising up. So it is communication, but it's also action, and it's taking time to understand what their goals are, and always be honest too. Like I'm not going to say which. There was a nonprofit that I started with, it was having some financial issues when we started. And my very first staff meeting, I just laid them out on the table, and they said, all the staff was, wow, we didn't know any of this. And so I'm not sharing it to scare you. I'm here to fix it, but I can't fix it without you.
Yeah.
And this is why you need to share these things, and hopefully we all learn together. We all build this, and we did. It turned out to the situation we changed rather quickly. But again, having that open communication and knowing what's going on helps others to help you. Like I said, providing mentorship, and no matter what you do, I want to bring up, because I'm just proud of it as mayor. I'm currently the New Jersey Conference of Mayors president.
Are you? Okay.
And so we have 411 member mayors, and then we work with the Urban Mayors Association, which has another 50 some odd mayors. And I joke I've been elected for 14 years, and I joke I was the youngest person in the room, and 14 years later I'm still the youngest person in the room. But it's disheartening as well. So it's not only do I want to mentor those that are working with me, but then finding opportunities within what you do. So I've always done that. So with the Conference of Mayors, we worked with the Policy Lab at Rutgers. I wanted to start an internship program to allow younger folks to understand the opportunities in government, but also to get elected. It turned into a mentorship program rather than internship, but it was probably even a better opportunity because it allowed students to interact with mayors and understand where we come from, regardless of party. I know when I started, I had an individual that kind of mentored me, and then once I got involved, I joined the Conference of Mayors to learn more about how to do a better job. But I brought up the Polytech. I've always worked with the Polytech in Hunterdon. I've had students in the past through their Autotech program in my shop. Currently, I work with the Bridging the Gap program, which is through their graphic arts and design program. But I think, mentoring others should be a key part of what you do, because it also enriches you as well. I mean, I learn things. I learn things by teaching things, and I learn things by seeing how others do things, and being in a program that's currently always teaching a topic. There might be something you missed because I haven't trained in that skill in 20 some odd years or something.
Right,
so it's, yeah.
See, that's interesting you should say that, because when I first started my company and I built up my team, it's small, I have 5, but when we're on we have bi-weekly kind of leadership meetings, and I found myself always doing the talking. And I realized this, as us being leaders, we also educate ourselves, and we're like, oh, maybe I'm doing that wrong. Maybe I should. So now I ask everybody, go around the room, tell me, what are your challenges? How can I help you? And it kind of goes to Ryan, the servant leader, right? It's like I really started asking, tell me your viewpoint on this situation we're having. And wow, does it bring a lot of different perspective than our perspective. I hate saying up here, but we're delegating so much that we're not in the weeds doing a lot of this. So we don't see the challenges that they will face when they're actually in the field doing it. And it's so great for us to have that perspective, right? And so now I let them do the talking.
Yeah, absolutely. To Desiree's point, as you said, we are on our 8th episode, and we have had the fortunate privilege of getting people like yourself on the board. And I have to tell you, this being the 8th, we have 4 guests, you being the 4th one now. I've learned something from every one of them. Either a little, and I always believe this, that you always take a little bit from everybody and you add it to your portfolio. And that's to your point about making yourself better. So, I've always enjoyed this discussion because the experience that the person brings to the table is something that you have not had. So you can always learn from somebody else's experience, right?
I mean, so I'm honored to be here with both of you, because Desiree, I met you here at the Chamber through the nonprofit committee, and sharing your knowledge with the nonprofit community. And Prem, you and I, we've spent some time together enjoying coffee and talking about your experiences. And what you've done is inspirational. And so that's the key, too, is learning from others. So helping guide others, but also learning from others.
Learning from others.
Definitely.
I know we covered a lot. Is there anything that we missed asking you, or from your experiences, would you want to share?
No, I think that it'd be great to sum up with some nugget of wisdom that ties it all together. But I think, one, finding resiliency in everything that you do, finding a path to enjoyment in what you do, always helping others in what you do, and always looking for opportunities to grow. And that kind of is, I'd say your guidance for your strategic plan. Right. Then look at each of those, and then how does that apply to your specific business, nonprofit, community organization, and use those to achieve your goals.
Right. Cool. That's awesome. One last question. If you have to share, I know you've had multitude of experiences. Is there any fascinating story that you can talk about, whether it could be the business that you went into and it was financially in disarray, but you turned around? Is there like a story that evolved because of your leadership and your analysis and business that you can share?
I think I'll use the Red Mill Museum as an example, and I think they're in a great position. I left last September as the executive director, and I actually started there and talk about opportunities. I had sponsored a car show through my auto shop back in 2007. Cool. And then had been asked to join the board, and then I, as board president, had filled in as interim director, and then had been asked to come back a second time as interim director. Had seen some financial issues, and asked if I could just stay and can we run this like a business. And I have a business degree, and I was running a historic museum, so I don't have a history degree, but I had staff that knew what they were doing. And what I shared is it's kind of like being a coach. Sure. And so my goal is to know who can be I'm not the best pitcher, I'm not the best third baseman, but I know who can. Resourceful. But I know who can. Yes. But I know who can do those roles, and that's what's key. But we talked about learning. So I went to a seminar from I think it was SUNY New York, as a museum studies program, and it started off with a large screen with a shower drain and water running down it, and it said, "This is your industry." And I'm like, what did I just sign up for? Like, literally, I brought my assistant director at the time, so I think I scared her as well. We're both sitting there looking at each other like, okay, how do we let's back out of this quickly. But again, that's where the resiliency comes in, and then also trying to understand. So I was like, well, why is it going down the drain, and looking at those challenges. And some of it was technology. Technology wasn't helping us because children wanted to sit on their phone rather than walk through a museum. Yeah. But then it made me think, how do we build relevance? And relevance was one of the ideas. Like, why do people connect with things? Yeah. Sure. I brought that from my automotive world because I watched the evolution, and that's actually a business decision. If you look at the value of vehicles, they're based on the connection generationally. So I looked at our museum and said, well, what are the things that we offer that we can now connect with the generation that comes to visit us, which would be, families with adults in the 35 to 45 range and kids in the 4 to 12 range. Yep. And we really focused on building community around those individuals and using the assets that the museum had rather than a very traditional history story, which the history is still very much part of it, but we looked at a different way of using it. And so in the time that I was executive director, we doubled our operating budget, closed all financial gaps. And a lot of that came from using SWOT analysis, a proper strategic plan. But it's all started. I still picture it like it was yesterday, that water running down the drain, being told that's what my industry was about a week after accepting the job. That is awesome. This was, it's absolutely a fascinating discussion, and
it can go on and on.
it can go on and on. But thank you. This was very, very pointed in the subject matter, and thank you, Paul, for all your experiences and your nuggets. I think we can there'll be a long list for the next podcast as to some of the lessons learned from this one.
Definitely half the podcast.
I say thank you for allowing me to share it. Enjoyed spending time with both of you.
That's awesome.
And if anyone wants to get a hold of you, where would they go to do that?
Sure. Actually, so I'll make it easy. My most easily accessible email I will share is actually through my auto shop. It's Big Paul's Cars.
Okay. Big Paul's Cars.
Big Paul's Cars at gmail.com. So make it pretty easy. And then I'll even put out my phone number, because as mayor, my number is on our township website. But 908-222-6158 is my cell. And again, it's actually on our township website in Bethlehem Township as well. But I would encourage, if anybody has a small business or a nonprofit and wants to bounce an idea off or think, I absolutely love sharing with others and hoping to find solutions or just even to learn from others.
That's awesome. So it's bigpaulscars.com?
At gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
So we have a next episode coming up. It will be part 2 of mastering your SWOT and SMART. But now we're going to be talking about SMART goals. So that will be coming up on April 9th. So stay tuned, and you can find any of our episodes on Spotify. Also, they are listed on our website, which is conversionchronicle.com. There's an S missing on the end because we couldn't find that domain. So conversionchronicle.com. You can see, you can also subscribe to us on the website, and we will then send you emails once every 2 weeks to tell you what our upcoming episodes are about. We are always live on Facebook. And again, find us on Spotify for any of our previous episodes. So I think that's it. Prem, anything else?
Oh, no. This was, thank you, Desiree. This was an absolute, thrill to have spoken to you, Paul, with all your experiences and bringing it live to the philosophy of a great SWOT analysis that we talked in the last episode. This was, on the money from a practicality of making the document live.
Yes.
And how it can be very effective and productive for your organization. So thank you very much. And as Desiree said, please reach out if you want to reach me. My email is pk@efficasconsulting.com, one word. Or you can always reach me on my cell, 516-359-6257.
And for me, website is clarentservices.com, and email is dhaluk@clarentservices.com.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.